Good morning. Yep, that's right. It's me, Uncle Lou, live for you on LouTube today. LouTube today. Mrs. Lou, live with you too.
Good morning.
Let's see how she tells you good morning there. Yeah, hey, how's everyone doing? Yeah, I haven't done a live show in a while. Because the trolls were winning and tried to get Uncle Lou banned. Of course, Uncle Lou appealed that and won. So Uncle Lou, very similar here to Floyd Mayweather, still undefeated. Uh-oh, Harambe. Man, I liked you too. I liked you, Harambe, but that's a no-no. You're gone now. I mean, I'm like most trolls. I'm sure Harambe can just make another account or log into one of the other ones that he already has, which is probably somewhere in the hundreds or something. But that's a no-no, Harambe. So that just got you the boot there, buddy. What's up, Jack? Blue Wizard, Danielle Moore, Daniel with the Y. Good morning, Emery. Shout out from Disgusta. I feel you there. XFL. Woo! I'll give you my thoughts on the XFL real quick. A few people have asked me to do a video on the XFL. How did the Coke taste? The Coke didn't really taste that bad. Obviously, it tasted flat. It tasted a little rusty. It's kind of hard to describe. I mean, I'm an idiot. I will admit that, but I'm not stupid, regardless of what a lot of you might think. I looked that up ahead of time and made sure that drinking a 40-year-old Coke couldn't kill you or hurt you. In fact, if you go to YouTube and type in drinking an old Coke or something, you can find plenty of videos of people drinking old Cokes. And while it doesn't taste very good, it won't hurt you. But the XFL, my initial thoughts on the XFL really was more towards the reaction to the news that the XFL was coming back than it was to the fact that the XFL is actually coming back. Most of the people that I know, either in real life or in internet land, whether it be YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, most of the people that I know that seem to be excited about the XFL coming back are the same people who complain nonstop that the NFL is rigged. So let's set aside for a second whether or not that's true. It's not the NFL being rigged. So you're excited. Okay, so you think the NFL is rigged, therefore you're excited about a pro wrestling football league. Slap yourself if you fall into that category. That's just ridiculous. As far as what I think about the actual league itself, I'm all for more football any way I can get it. I thought the XFL was entertaining the first time around. Was it great football? No, it wasn't great football. But I don't think most people that were watching the XFL were watching it to see great football. I think you were watching it for the entertainment value, and I thought it was pretty entertaining. The nicknames that the people had, cameramen on the field. Now, I don't know how much of the old XFL they're going to be incorporating into the new XFL. I don't know. And I'm going to freely admit here, other than what I've read briefly over the last day or two on Facebook and Twitter, I haven't read any of the official releases from Vince McMahon or the XFL or anything like that. So I'm not going to try to give you some sort of expert or knowledgeable opinion on what I think the XFL is going to be. This is just sort of my generic thoughts on it right there. I'm all for more football. If they keep it entertaining, I'm okay with that. I think it would be kind of cool to get to see maybe some college players that we liked, right, that weren't quite good enough to make it in the NFL, get a chance on a slightly lower level. So I think that's got a chance to draw some attention maybe from the college football fan base. I can think of a couple of examples, players from UGA over the last few years that weren't quite good enough to make it in the NFL, that I would have liked to have seen play football somewhere, and maybe an XFL type league is a landing spot for some of those people. Aaron Murray, for example. Now, I'm not sure. Again, I don't know what they're looking to do with this XFL. Aaron Murray is kind of a clean cut, white bread type of guy. I don't know if that's what they're looking for in the XFL, if they're looking for people who have actual football talent like an Aaron Murray, or if they're looking for people like the He Hate Me guy who have like larger than life personalities and things like that. I really don't know. Good morning, SEC Dog. AJ, what's up? Tebow versus Manziel, good versus evil there. There would be some good storylines there for a Tebow versus Manziel. Colin Kaepernick, now obviously there's going to be a list of names that the XFL is going to have in mind, right? If they could somehow get a Colin Kaepernick, that would be huge for the XFL because that name is going to attract a ton of national media attention to the XFL. Other big names, maybe players who've been kicked out of the NFL for substance abuse issues. Is the XFL going to allow those players in? Domestic violence situations are big in the NFL right now. Is the XFL going to let some of those players in? So, I mean, I think depending on how the XFL, decides to go about it, I think it has some potential. I mean, if you remember the last time the XFL came around, it garnered a ton of attention early on. The first couple of weeks, the ratings were pretty good, and then it just steadily nosedived. There was a documentary done on the XFL. Was it a 30 for 30 show? 30 for 30 documentary on ESPN? I think that's what it was. I could be wrong, but there was a documentary done on the XFL, and they did a good job of detailing that. Started off hot and just sort of nosedived. Let's see, what else y'all want to talk about? Good morning, Uncle Lou. Love your videos. Thank you to Goat Watson. And I hope Deshaun is healing up, too. I don't talk a lot about the NFL just because this is mainly a college channel. And but Deshaun Watson really surprised me this year in the NFL. Not that I didn't think he would be good, but I didn't think he would be that good that quick. He was one of the best quarterbacks in the league, in my opinion, the first half of the season before he tore his knee up. And on a side note and a less important note, that also cost me my fantasy football championship this year, in my opinion. I was killing it the first half of the season with Deshaun Watson. He went down. I didn't have a legitimate backup quarterback, really. Ended up making the playoffs, but lost in the first round of my fantasy football playoffs. But anyway, I hope he's healing up. Georgia 2019 national champions. A little too early to say that. I do think Georgia will be a top 5 or top 6 team heading into next year, in my opinion. They're never going to be favored to win the SEC as long as Nick Saban and Alabama continue to do what they're going to do, but they weren't favored to win the SEC this year. And this is something I've said about Alabama and Nick Saban for a long time. Nobody in the SEC is going to, quote-unquote, overthrow Nick Saban. But as good as Alabama has been, and they've been very good, there's been several years where they either haven't won the national title or haven't won the SEC championship. And I think Georgia needs to be a team that in the years that doesn't happen, they're the next team up. I do think that Georgia is close to Alabama, and I think the national championship game proved that. But one thing you have to remember is that Alabama has been playing on that level for 9 years. Georgia has been playing at that level for 1 year, and that's what separates having a really, really good year versus having a really, really good run or a dynasty like what Alabama is on. If you look at what Clemson has done, making the playoffs, 3 years in a row. Even Ohio State, even though they got shut out a couple of years ago and then didn't make the playoffs this year, I really think Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson are really the only 3 college teams in the nation whose I don't want to say goal, but expectation is to make the college football playoff every single year. I really don't think any other team in the Power 5 should have that as an expectation. That includes Georgia, who made the playoffs this year. That includes Oklahoma, who made the playoffs this year. That includes Washington, who made the playoffs last year. Michigan State, who made the playoffs a couple of years ago. I mean, you can go through these teams that have made the playoffs, but if you look at consistency over the last 5 years, I really think that Clemson, Ohio State, and Alabama are really the only 3 fan bases in America who can have an expectation to make the playoffs every single year. Again, that's not a knock on any other team. Yeah, Oklahoma's been there twice, but if you think you're currently on the level of a Clemson, an Alabama, or an Ohio State, then you're just delusional, Curtis. I mean, you're just being a homer. That would be like me saying that we're on the level of a Clemson, Alabama, or Ohio State. I mean, we're just not. Over the last 5 years, the consistency amongst those three programs, I think, is greater than any other program in America right now. I think every year you're liable to have a team or two that sort of comes out of nowhere, but I think for the foreseeable future, three of the best coaches in America are in Tuscaloosa, Clemson, and Columbus. And for that reason, you're going to continue to see those three teams in the playoffs or close to the playoffs almost every single year. And so now of those three teams, what you're going to have, I mean, I'm willing to bet right now without looking at schedules. I haven't done any breakdowns of next season. I haven't looked at who's leaving and who's coming back for a lot of these other teams. I'm willing to make a friendly bet with anybody on here right now that two of those three teams will make the college football playoff next year. Is there anybody that would be willing to bet against that? I'm willing to bet that two of the three, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, make the playoffs next year. And you guys know I'm no fan of those three teams. These live videos aren't really trash talk videos. I try to give you my honest opinion. I try to at least pretend like I know what I'm talking about. But I would be willing to bet that two of those three teams make the college football playoff next year. I would not be willing to make a bet right now that Georgia, Oklahoma, Washington, Michigan State, whatever other team you want to name, would make the playoffs. I think the odds are below. I think the odds are over 50% that Alabama, Clemson, or Ohio State make the playoff, and I think they're under 50% for any other team you want to name. So. XFL versus NFL. Steve, I did that during the first 5 minutes or so of this video, so when this live video ends and it gets uploaded to YouTube, you can go back and check that out. Spencer Jackson says, go Cox, Lou. That's going to be one of the biggest games of the year for UGA this year, sir, at South Carolina week 2. Move that game back to where it belongs in the first month of the season. Scheduling quirk with Notre Dame caused that game to get moved this past year. But I like having that game early in September. It's usually a good litmus test for both teams, see where they're at there. We've struggled in Columbia over the last decade or so. I think a lot of that had to do with Steve Spurrier, to be honest. I think South Carolina is on an upward trajectory. I don't think they're on a level of a UGA right now. Does that mean they can't win that game? No. Of course they can win that game. I would think that right now Georgia would be considered a favorite in that game, even though it's on the road. But that's going to be one of the early games of the season to keep an eye on. I think that game and at LSU is probably the two toughest games for Georgia this year. Yeah, Unruly Simeon just says the same thing. LSU going to be a tough one. I agree. You know, I know LSU's lost some coaches. I know they've lost some players, but they recruit well year in and year out, and it's never easy to win at LSU. Thoughts on Kentucky? I really respect your opinion, what we need, where we look good at. My thoughts on Kentucky really aren't going to change for the foreseeable future, and this sort of goes back to expectations. I think Kentucky fans should expect, at this point, with Mark Stoops where he is right now, I think Kentucky fans should expect to make a bowl game, not hope to make a bowl game, not cross your fingers to make a bowl game. I think the minimum expectation right now for Kentucky should be to make a bowl game every single year. I think Kentucky's expectation should be to have a winning record in the SEC. I think Kentucky should be competing with and beating Vanderbilt, Missouri on a regular basis. I think they should be going... I mean, you should be beating Tennessee, really, right now. Now, we'll see what happens with Tennessee with the Jeremy Pruitt hire and how quick he's able to get them turned around, or if he's able to get them turned around. But, you know, the days, as far as right now, looking at Kentucky and calling them a 3 or 4 win team like you used to could do, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, that's not reality right now. I think the expectations of Kentucky have been raised. Now, are they sky high and through the roof? No. I mean, you have to try to be a little realistic here. I think Kentucky, look, if Kentucky goes 8-4, I think that's a really good season for Kentucky, right? I look at Kentucky and Georgia and basketball and football sort of in reverse. I don't want to get off on a rant on Mark Fox here, although I have a feeling that may end up happening. But I complain about Georgia basketball all the time, and people tell me, Lou, Georgia's not a basketball school. You're never going to be winning basketball championships. I don't want to win basketball championships, and I have a feeling that most Kentucky fans don't expect to be winning national titles. But as a Kentucky fan, don't you expect to make a bowl game? Well, as a Georgia fan, I expect to win a couple of tournament games per decade, okay? And Mark Fox has been in Athens for 9 years. He can't even make the NCAA tourney, much less win a game, okay? There's 68 teams make the NCAA tournament. Then they say, well, Georgia doesn't do the AAU thing with the high school kids, and they don't go out and buy recruits. Listen, I know some of that goes on in college basketball. You might even say a lot of it goes on in college basketball. But you can't tell me that 68 teams a year are buying their teams off of the AAU circuit. It's not happening. So there's no excuse that Georgia can't make. Georgia has the 4th most NBA talent in America. Okay? The 4th most NBA talent in America comes out of the state of Georgia, high school talent. You can't tell me we can't get 1 or 2 of those kids a year to make UJ's basketball team good enough to make the tournament and win a game or 2 in the tournament every 4 or 5 years. Mark Fox has got to go. He's overstayed his welcome. It's just ridiculous. How many leads can we possibly blow? We're at, what, 14, 15 points on Auburn a week ago. 14, 15 points on, I'm drawing a blank now. The team we played a couple of days ago. We were up on Kansas State today. I mean, we just given all these games away. The offense disappeared today, Tyler. I mean, I don't know how much, if you watched that game, it looks like you did based on that comment. The offense just completely disappeared. I mean, it's just embarrassing at this point. Who should be the favorite to win the Heisman next year, in my opinion? I was talking about this on Facebook the other day because there's been some Vegas odds released that have Jake Fromm 4th or 5th in the Heisman odds. I'm not putting my money on Jake Fromm. It's got nothing to do with Jake Fromm. I wouldn't put my money on any Georgia quarterback right now to win the Heisman. Aaron Murray in 2012 passed for over 4,000 yards, had something like 36 or 37 touchdowns, and only 10 interceptions, and didn't get a single Heisman vote. I don't see Jake Fromm coming anywhere near those numbers this year, not because he's not any good, but because we're going to be running the ball again. I think he'll be better than he was last year, which he was great last year. I have no problem with Fromm, but he's not winning the Heisman. If I had to put my money on one person right now to win the Heisman, it would be Wisconsin running back, is it Jonathan Taylor? True freshman last year, rushed for almost as many yards as Bryce Love did out at Stanford, a couple hundred yards less. Jonathan Taylor is a beast, and he's pretty much all Wisconsin has. So you know he's going to get a ton of carries. It's not like a Georgia situation where you've got 3 or 4 running backs all running the ball 9, 10, 11 times a game. At Wisconsin, it's Jonathan Taylor 25, 30 times a game. He's going to put up huge numbers. He's going to have multiple 200-yard games. He plays in a major conference, the Big Ten. Wisconsin's in a terrible, terrible division. They're going to be 12-0 again, maybe 11-1. So my money right now would be on him. Jawan Jennings, come on. Bryce Love is a real possibility. The media loves him, so that's a possibility, and he's really, really good. My question about Bryce Love is durability. He's had a hard time staying healthy with a lot less workload than what Jonathan Taylor has got. The only thing I like about Jawan Jennings is that he tells the truth. Jawan Jennings tells the truth. At least on Instagram he does. The guy went on Instagram and said what Uncle Lou has been saying about Tennessee for 2 years. Jawan Jennings goes on Instagram and pretty much summed it up in about a minute and a half. The guy was a genius on Instagram. Of course, now y'all begging him to come back to the team, but, that is what it is. Do I think Chubb will play for the Falcons? No. I don't. Recruiting class, we just got passed by Ohio State, so we're down to number 2 in recruiting now. Being number 1 in recruiting versus being number 3, 4, or 5 is really only a bragging point. And I'll admit that. If we finish number 1, I'm going to brag about it on here like no other. But in terms of what that means for the talent that you're getting, not a whole lot of difference between 1 and 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we've still got a chance to finish number 1. We got a good chance of flipping Otis Reese from, Michigan he's committed to. I think we might flip him. He's a 4-star, I think. And then it wouldn't surprise me if we picked up another 5-star. So we'll see what happens. We've got another couple of weeks till signing day. Is it February 7th, right? We're about 10 days, I guess, till signing day. So we'll see. But, I mean, we're definitely going to finish with another top 3 class, and it wouldn't surprise me if we finished up at number 1. Mayfield goes to Cleveland. I've heard Cleveland is not drafting a quarterback. I don't know. I haven't looked at the NFL draft yet. I will do a couple of draft videos when it gets a little bit closer to that. I'll probably wait until after signing day, and then I'll do some stuff on the draft and which college players might go where and who I think would fit good where and things like that. But I did hear somebody say that Cleveland is not taking a quarterback, so I don't know. It would make my day if Cleveland picked Baker Mayfield. I can't think of a better place for a Baker Mayfield to go than to Oklahoma. I mean, than to Cleveland. What do I think about Georgia 5-star recruits? I love 5-star recruits, and every time I talk about it, I get the comments like, well, 5-star recruits, they could turn out to be busts. Yeah, they could. And then you get other comment, oh, so such and such was a 3-star recruit, and he became an All-American and an NFL Hall of Famer. Yeah, all of that is true. But look at the recruiting rankings over the last 10 years, and look at the final season rankings over the last 10 years. There's a reason they correlate, okay? If you recruit 10 5-stars, is 1 or 2 of them going to be a bust? Yeah, they are. But guess what? That means you still got 8 on your team or whatever it is. Anybody who says they'd rather have 3 stars than 5 stars is just an idiot. This is a great recruiting class for UGA, led by Justin Fields and Zamir White, the #1 dual-threat quarterback and the #1 running back, respectively. Offensive line, some serious beef there. Jamari Sawyer. He was my most wanted player this year was Jamari Sawyer, another 5-star offensive guard. Yeah, that's a good idea, Squid Tard. But I don't know how to do it. This is done. I'm doing this on my phone, Squid Tard, and I don't know how to make you a moderator from my phone. That's embarrassing. Maybe there might not be a way. But the next time I'm doing a live stream in the Lou studio on the computer, I'll mod you. Grant F. Lou, should I commit to Georgia or Chattanooga? Chattanooga. UJ choked in the Natty. Okay. UJ choked in the what, Dennis? Say it again. Type it again. UJ choked in the what? UJ choked in the what, little buddy? The Natty? The national championship game? Okay. That's what I thought you said. Good morning. Who should open the season as #1, Clemson or Alabama? ESPN said Clemson. I saw that the other day. I still think Alabama's #1 right now. I mean, Alabama. Now, here's the thing about Alabama, but we hear this, this happens every couple of years, right? They're losing a bunch of coaches, a bunch of assistants, some coordinators. They're losing a ton of defensive talent. They're losing one of their top 2 running backs. They're losing the wide receiver, Ridley. But hell, doesn't this happen at Alabama every year? And they just keep reloading, right? Tua looked good. Now, I will say this about Tua, and this is not to talk bad about Tua. I don't think you can look at the second half of the national championship game and what Tua did against Georgia and say he's throwing for 4,000 yards next year and winning the Heisman and going undefeated. Georgia did not prepare for Tua at all. I don't care what Kirby Smart or Mel Tucker says or any of these idiots on Dog Nation or anywhere else. Georgia did not prepare one lick for Tua. Nobody, I repeat, nobody thought that Nick Saban would have the balls to pull Jalen Hurts and put Tua into that game. And there's a couple of... #1, nobody thought Georgia was going to dominate Alabama like that. Did they? No. Nobody. I didn't think that. I didn't even. If I didn't think it, nobody thought it. Nobody thought Georgia was going to be dominating Alabama at halftime. Nobody thought that. So nobody thought there would be a reason for Nick Saban to even consider having to make that switch. So we'll see. I think Tua's great. Tua's got a world-class arm. He wasn't fazed at all by the spotlight in that game, and I think he's got a ton of ability. And the sky's the limit for him. But I think we got to wait and see now how he does against teams that are expecting Alabama to be able to pass the ball. We'll see. Is Nick Saban the greatest coach of all time? Yes, he is. I've said that a bunch of times. I call it. He was to me, he was the greatest before he won this national championship. This just cemented it. Louisville versus Alabama. Alabama's going to win that game.